On Mondays, I oftentimes, maybe always, I don't know, like to talk about overreactions versus reality. And the reality is my own reality, so you can agree or disagree. So that's what we'll do now. There are overreactions, always. And then there's a pretty decent dose of reality. So let's try it. Overreaction. Texas A&M, your Caldwell Aggies, hit a home run with Jimbo Fisher's replacement. Reality. No. Was it Detroit head coach Dan Campbell? No, it was not. Was it Deion Sanders? That would have been cool. No, it was not. Urban Meyer. Yeah. That one fit. Urban Meyer. That's going to fix stuff in Caldwell. Urban Meyer. No. Mark Stoops, the head coach of Kentucky? No. Not only no on Mark Stoops. Oh, this hurt. This one hurt. Not only no on Mark Stoops, but reportedly he turned them down. The head coach at Kentucky admitted over the weekend, this is Mark Stoops. The guy's done a very good job there. I'm not dissing that. He admitted over the weekend that he turned down, quote, a major program. That would be A&M. That stings. That one hurts. Fresh off the $150 million Jimbo Fisher embarrassment, the head coach at Kentucky, a guy that was doing great things at a basketball school, said no. So A&M hired a coach from another basketball school, the guy from Duke. His name is Mike Elko. He's been the head coach there for a couple of years. Duke is 7-5 this year. They went 9-4 last year. So there's a face painter argument that will work if you would like. And then there's a realistic scenario that will also play out. So let me do this because it will make you happy, because this is what people do whenever a coach is fired and a new one is brought in. You automatically think it's the next Vince Lombardi. Every single time we've, fill in the blank, we've hired the next Vince Lombardi. Okay, so face painters. Here's the upside. Face painters. He turned Duke, a school that doesn't care at all about football, a program that was 3-9 the year before he got there. He flipped them from 3-9 to 9-4. At which point, right now, face painters are going to say, see, if you're Aggies, you'll say this, see Longhorn Jeff, see what he did? I'm going to say, settle down. Settle down. Now, there's the face painter upside. Look what he did at Duke. And it's hard to argue because he flipped that thing around at Duke. Yes. All right. If that's where you want to jump off and that's where you want to leave it, you go right ahead and do that. But I'm going to give you the comeback. The comeback is this. Charlie Strong, Tom Herman. I can keep going down a list of coaches that have won and won big. Look, Chuck Strong set the world on fire at Louisville. So I can go down a list, a long list of coaches that won at mid-tier or lower programs. Charlie Strong at Louisville, Tom Herman at Houston, and it doesn't translate at football blue bloods. It doesn't. Most of the time, it doesn't translate. It doesn't really add up at first. On the surface, you're going to say, wait a second. I mean, you can flip Louisville, you can flip Houston, you can flip Duke. Well, just get the stuff at A&M. Surely you can win. Yeah, Texas has done it countless times. Countless times. No. It usually doesn't work. Why it doesn't work is weird. But give me a chance to pour water on this and be a total buzzkill. Here's why you don't know that it will work. I'll be polite. I'm not going to say the guy's going to flame out at A&M. I'm not going to say that. Usually it doesn't work. But here's what you don't know. Because when you try, if you're an A&M or you're Texas, you try to make sure what you do know. You need a slam dunk. You've just burned through a couple $100 million on an absolute idiotic hire that is flamed out in an embarrassing way. You need a home run, and you don't have it here because you don't know. You don't know what coaching at Duke means in comparison to coaching at A&M means. And I'm going to tell you, they're completely different jobs. The reason why it doesn't translate, they're completely different job descriptions. So A&M needed and wanted better than you don't know. This is what happens with guys that do these amazing things at these startups, at these basketball schools, okay? Or these mid-tier programs. You don't know. And you needed a slam dunk. You needed to know A&M, and they don't know. They can talk themselves into it, but the streets are littered with guys that it just didn't work. So being the head coach at a football factory, okay, doesn't... Understand, mid-tier doesn't translate into a blue blood. Being a head coach at a football factory like A&M, where they throw all the money at it, obviously, it's a different job description than being the head coach at Duke, Houston, or Louisville. I know it didn't sound like it. I know you're going to say, well, that what do you mean? You're just a football coach. You recruit. I mean, it's got to be easier. It's a different job description. It is. Coaching at A&M is not coaching at Duke. Coaching at A&M is not coaching at Louisville or Houston or, go down the list. When you're at Duke, Mike Elko was at Duke, or Charlie Strong was at Louisville, you're grinding to win at football. You are obsessed with it. You're thrown in the middle of it. You are grinding at football to win. You're spending time grinding at winning in football. You're grinding with coaches. You're grinding with recruits. You're grinding at the job of being a football coach. That's what you do at Duke. That's what he did at Duke, I'm sure. I'm sure every waking moment they were talking about football stuff and recruiting stuff and, just making guys play better. You go to A&M, and guess what you end up doing? You don't do that. You give speeches to fans. You give speeches to alumni. And most importantly, you kiss the ass of rich men that own your program. That's what you do. You don't grind. You're not coaching. You're just sucking up. You're the PR person for Football Inc. When you're fixing a program at Duke, for example, you just grind at football. The job is football. The job is to try to figure out a way to win at football. When you inherit a program, you inherit a sales and PR job. When you inherit the A&M program, particularly now, after they've had a giant flame out, there are people now that have given money. There are people now more intimately involved than ever before. You're answering to them. You're not answering to coaches and players. You're answering to rich people. When you inherit that program, you inherit the sales job and the PR job, not the football job. It's a different skill set from fixing a program. I know it seems hard to believe, but think it through what happens with these guys that go from these startups, these fix-it projects, to a blue blood, and why in the world it wouldn't work. And the streets really are littered with, more times than not, it doesn't work. Ask Texas. You're not grinding football. You're pitching and you're selling and you're sucking up. Guys that are used to football and recruiting don't always translate. That's really what they probably like to do, and it takes a different breed of cat to jump into a place, a blue blood program, where you're having to just deal with a bunch of people, particularly rich people. Hiring a guy from Duke is a risk. I don't care how many games he wins. Hiring a proven head coach, not so much. They're not like-minded jobs, not like-minded mindsets, not similar descriptions. Now you're going to say, well, if that's true, Longhorn Jeff, why didn't it work with Jimbo Fisher? Okay, because you paid him too much, and like any person, he was set. The incentive was mostly gone. You pay any one of us $150 million with no risk at all? Yeah, we're probably going to be pretty lazy and pretty lousy too. Give anybody $100 million, and I suspect they get worse at their job. So here's the optimistic way of looking at it. Here is what I think you can't say. I mean, if you want to argue with what I've just laid out about these mid-tier startup programs and how it doesn't translate, that's fine. Let's argue about it. But here is the flip side, and it's a modern solution, I think. Here's what you can hope happens to a guy coming from Duke to A&M. And don't start this stuff when he coached his assistant at A&M. Yeah, he was a football guy. Now he's a PR guy. Here's how it can work at A&M. with a guy from Duke. The Steve Sarkisian template. Because you could say the same stuff that I just said about Steve Sarkisian, the guy that bounced around, although he'd been a head coach before, but bounced around. Well, why would it work at Texas then in the short term? Now, let's be careful here. That's one good season. Let's be a little careful. It's one good season for Steve Sarkisian. But the template is this. A good mind that has a lot of the CEO stuff. You're the face of the franchise. You're the marketer of the franchise. You're not the football coach. You're the marketer of the franchise. If some of that stuff is taken off Mike Elko's plate and it's about, coaching, because here's the advantage that A&M has, that Texas has. They can buy players. That's it. You just go and outbid everyone else. You have more money. You'll spend more money. You'll get the best players. It's free agency now in college football with the highest bidder getting the best players. Now, you can screw that up, but part of the fight, part of the different mindset of going from a Duke to chasing, blue chip high school players that A&M wants is that now you don't have to do too much of a sales job with them because you just give them more money. So it may be that a guy doesn't have to do all that much recruiting because you're just going to pay him off anyway. And no, I'm not picking on A&M. It's exactly what Texas and USC do. Recruiting players is not hard when you outspend everybody but Texas and USC. If he and his coaching staff can manage the payola system of today, he might be fine. Might be. Mike Elko might work. The argument is A&M needed a sure thing. And you don't have it with a guy from Duke. Overreaction. The Philadelphia Eagles are more lucky than good. Hear this a lot. Reality. Shut your face. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Everyone who's saying this, are you kidding? At some point, you have to acknowledge winning is not an accident. Okay? It just doesn't you don't get lucky enough to win that often. Coming back to win repeatedly is not an accident. The Eagles are 10-1, and the tone of the day is, well, they're lucky to get there. That's crazy. They've won 4 straight when trailing at halftime. They're not accidental. When the Eagles beat Dallas, I said the difference between the two teams is one team is a master closer. Dallas played them. Dallas arguably outplayed Philadelphia in Philadelphia. They're inches away from beating them. And then I made the comment at the time, that team, that Eagles team, that franchise, that brand, they just know how to close. They just close the deal. And there's something to be said for that. That's what's happening now. That was 5 or 6 weeks ago, and they keep doing it. It's not an accident. They beat Buffalo 37-34 when anyone with a pulse would have said, if Buffalo scores 34 in Philadelphia, they win and probably win pretty easily. And most people would have made that bet. Except they didn't. Because you don't. Because Philadelphia just closes. They just close. They just win. In whatever form it needs to take, notice how they just keep taking that form. They win in a variety of ways. That's not an accident. The Eagles score 37 because it's what they do. It's just what they do. They close, and a big reason they close. If you're looking for the reasons, yeah, they're built in. The reason they close is, one, their quarterback is a calm, emotionless surgeon. There's no up or down. It's just a surgeon going to work. He keeps engineering drives to win no matter what he needs to do. That's Jalen Hurts. He's a surgeon. He threw, 4 passes in the second half against Buffalo, and 3 were touchdowns. Their defense, when they need to stop, right, Dallas? When they need a stop, they get it. Just ask the Cowboys how that works out. Well, but it's a few inches away. But notice how they keep doing it over and over again. They need a clutch kick. Yeah, they get it. Think of this difference, just to prove to you just sort of this difference in, I guess, for no other term than DNA. Think of the difference in the outcomes, right? The Texans, who are Just a pleasure. I mean, they have found their way back from the dead. They have found their way back from being irrelevant. They are interesting. They're exciting. They got a superstar quarterback, a cool head coach. I mean, stuff is working and going in the right direction for the Texans, except notice how it ends. Just notice. The Texans have a game-tying kick. They do everything right. He hits the ball well. It hits the crossbar and bounces off. It's close. Right, they're close. Teams are close. Good teams are close. The Eagles are there. They're just there. Whatever they have to do, it goes their way because they make it. So the Eagles, Jake Elliott, in a driving rain, a cold rain, he blasts, and I'm not saying that as a joke, he blasts a 59-yard field goal that had at least 3 to 5 yards to spare because that's what he does, because that's what the Eagles do. And then they just win. And you think, man, we had them. But you didn't. You didn't have them. They're going to lose somewhere along the way, right? It's just law of averages is going to catch up. Okay? But I don't think their winning is just luck by any stretch. There's no way you do it this often. It didn't. The same thing with Brady. It took a long time for people to appreciate Brady, the surgeon. After a while, you start to realize, man, he gets it late in the game, they're going to win. Philadelphia gets in a game, they're going to win. It's in their DNA. It's just they have a DNA unlike anybody else in the NFL right now. Overreaction. Texas will get shut out of the college football playoff. You know, the playoff, the asinine setup of 4 teams picked by bureaucrats staying in an airport Hilton. You know, that playoff, that really big playoff, that masterful playoff, that real fair playoff that we have that's not really a playoff. Texas will get shut out of it. Reality. Probably, but there's a decent chance. In fact, Texas's chances, I think, keep getting better. Not great. I'm not arguing that. But they're not shut out by any stretch. In fact, they've sort of inched their way closer to getting into the asinine playoff that's not really a playoff. Every week, the Texas path gets clearer. Not a great path, but it just seems to get a little clearer. And it's not an outrageous scenario. Okay, so follow me on this. It's, you know, these stories are done everywhere now. But step 1, the name. Yeah. Don't tell me the bureaucrats in an airport Hilton don't care about names and brands. It seems pretty obvious they do. So step 1 is the name. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Just like Georgia is going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're a blue blood. The goofy committee is influenced by big names. Number 2, they get to blow out their last 2 opponents, while everyone else, if you've noticed, has tough games. I know what you're going to say. Don't be too logical here. The process isn't logical. It's an art show. You're going to say, well, that's not right, Jeff, because these are other competitive games, playing competitive programs. Right. You're exactly right. Doesn't matter. They get to blow out their last 2 opponents. Texas beats Oklahoma State for the Big 12 championship. They should blow them out. It is a terrible matchup for Oklahoma State, and it's a really good matchup for Texas. It's a real possibility, I should say a probability, they blow out Oklahoma State because Oklahoma State cannot stop the run. That was Oklahoma State struggling with BYU. They can't stop the run at all. That's a giant problem because Texas can run and should and will. Next, Oklahoma State's best chance is to run on Texas. Again, a problem. Bad matchup for Oklahoma State. That's a Texas strength. Texas should win that easily. Okay, there's part 2. Number 3, Florida State loses. They lose their conference championship game. They just struggled with Florida. It's not outrageous to say they could lose. Not likely, but it makes the path fairly clear for Texas. Then step 4, Alabama beats Georgia. Didn't say it was likely, but here's the thing. Georgia's due for a bad day. Georgia is due. It just happens. Law of averages will get them. Georgia's due for a bad day, and Alabama is as hot as anyone. And Nick Saban has done one of his best coaching jobs in years. So I know it's iffy. I wouldn't probably place the bet on it, but it's possible. Then Washington beats Oregon again. By the way, both of those teams should be in the playoff. That's not really a playoff, but it's not going to happen. So both of them should be over Texas in the playoff. That's not really a playoff. But the loser is likely out. Oregon is the better team, but for Texas to get in, they need a Washington win. And I wouldn't make that bet either. But the path for Texas over the last few weeks has become clearer. It's becoming more possible. There, problem solved.